The sponsor of my stream and podcast is DistroKid. If you want 10% off on your first subscription with DistroKid, release your music to the world on every major music platform. Make sure to go to my website, andrewvanzark.com, and click on the discount link under the tab of DistroKid.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
Welcome to the Andrew Vanzark podcast.
Now you're listening with power.
So today we're going to talk about the Ewoks and who they are, and for those of you who don't know who the Ewoks are sentient humanoids, averaging about 1 meter in height, a diminutive primitive species that are furred bipeds, natives to the moon of Endor. Endor is like the planet where Yoda lives, and it's really swampy and whatnot. So they are curious individuals, and they are extremely skilled in forest survival, and they are extremely constructive. You know, they do a lot of construction of primitive technology like gliders and catapults. So Ewoks were most notable for helping the Rebel Alliance defeat the forces of the Galactic Empire at the Battle of Endor, allowing the shield generator to be destroyed, and in turn the BS-2 Death Star 2 mobile battle station be completely annihilated, and boom. They used spears, slings, and knives as weapons. So the Ewoks are really primitive. They're like the cavemen of that era of Star Wars, you know, of that galactic, far, far away galaxy. Although skilled in forest survival and construction of primitive technology, the Ewoks had yet to progress past stone-level technology when discovered by the Empire. They were quick learners, however, when exposed to the advanced technology with simple mechanical processes and concepts, the Ewoks could not comprehend what they were seeing at the moment, because they're used to really primitive stuff like rocks, spears, and all that stuff, that once they noticed that there was actual galactic technology and more advanced things, they were like, whoa, how's this a thing? You know, it's inevitable. So when you meet something new in your life, you can't comprehend it until you get to explore it, or get the instructions, or get explained what it is or how it works. You know?
Now you're listening with power. The sponsor of my stream and podcast is DistroKid. If you want 10% off on your first subscription with DistroKid, release your music to the world on every major music platform. Make sure to go to my website, andrewvanzark.com, and click on the discount link under the tab of DistroKid.
Welcome back. So let's continue talking about the Ewoks. So, the Ewoks are fierce warriors, the top of the food chain on a savage planet. Okay, first of all, they live on a moon, not a planet. Second of all, gotta keep that in mind, because people might think Endor is a planet, but Endor is a moon. So that being said, the history of the Ewoks, they start when the Galactic Empire began operations on the moon of Endor. They raised an Ewok village to erect a shield generator complex, forcing on the few survived to a close neighboring village led by Chief Chirpa. Princess Leia Organa, part of the Rebel Strike team, met and befriended Wicket W. Warwick. After meeting him, Organa and Warwick saw a pair of Imperial stormtroopers confronting two other Ewoks. Out of the Rebel Princess and Ewoks were able to defeat the two soldiers. Organa was taken back to the Ewoks village as a guest. Meanwhile, however, another group of Ewoks captured her fellow Rebel Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, Han Solo, R2-D2, and C-3PO. When these Ewoks saw the protocol droid C-3PO, they identified him as the Golden One, who they believed had brought balance to Endor's millennia before. Despite Wicket and Organa's protest, the Ewok shaman Lograi attempted to sacrifice them as a feast in C-3PO's honor. Skywalker's use of the Force to make C-3PO levitate combined with the droid's warning soon changed Chief Chirpa's mind. However, That night, C-3PO told the Council of Elders the adventures of the rebel heroes. The Ewoks accepted the rebels into their tribe and allied themselves to their cause. The Ewoks helped in the ground battle to destroy the Imperial shield generator on the forest floor, and their primitive weapon felled the stormtroopers and scout walkers of the Empire. Although they took many losses to the Imperial blaster fire, their assistance paved the way of the destruction of the DS-2 Death Star 2 mobile battle station of the Rebel victory at the Battle of Endor. Legend claimed it was the first time the Ewoks had returned to combat in generations. Later that night, the Ewoks held a huge celebration that could be heard through the forest. So, by 2 years after the Battle of Endor, many Ewoks had become calf farmers. Additionally, at least one Pika had found employment with the New Republic as a slicer. When a galaxy-wide uprising against the First Order erupted, one of the worlds to rise up was Endor. Warwick and his son, Pumet Warwick, witnessed the destruction of a First Order Resurgent-class Star Destroyer by a Holdo maneuver. So where do the Ewoks fall into place in the galaxy far, far away? Despite their primitive technology and their isolated homeworld, Ewoks were not totally unknown in the wider galaxy. During the Clone Wars, Ewoks jerky was sold at Power Sliders dinner on the planet Abafar. As a manager of recompense for saving Endor, some Ewoks agreed to travel off-world to help rebel veterans recuperate, working with Dr. Arsad as Therapy Ewok. Therapy Ewoks were offered to those who had suffered the horrors of war, such as witnessing tragedy, and needed help with their recovery. Those that found this option distasteful were sometimes given the use of a therapy droid instead. Let's talk a little bit about the culture of the Ewoks. So the Ewoks, quoting here, they're using a very primitive dialect, but I do believe they think I am some sort of god, C-3PO said. So by the time the Galactic Civil War, the Ewoks had reached a level of civilization where they engaged in religious, artistic, medical, and other political activities, and spoke in their own native tongue of Ewokese. Nevertheless, they still focused most of their energies on a daily provision of food. They had acquired knowledge of hunting, the construction of complex wooden structures, and the creation of fire. While most of their lives would be spent in the treetops, several members of the tribe would be required to venture out on the forest floor for berries, gather herbs, and hunt. During warm summer months, some Ewoks stayed in fishing villages or hunting and farming lodged on the forest floor, utilizing ponies and boar dogs to haul loads of supplies between settlements. They nonetheless kept their guard up for ferocious predators and other sentient creatures such as the Jusums. Yes, even though they are pretty advanced with their technology and their ways of life and all that, Ewoks are really primitive. If you watch the two films that feature in a full length the Ewoks, Battle of Endor and the Caravan of Ewoks, you can totally see how primitive they were. Rocks, spears, wooden structures in the middle of the forest. You know, they look like tiny bears, if you ask me. And they're really adorable. I'm not gonna lie. And back in the 80s, as much as today we are a huge fan of Grogu, aka Baby Yoda, they try to make the Ewoks to have that same acceptance that Grogu has now, after the Mandalorian came to place. And it's interesting how most people could not fathom or connect as much as we connect with Grogu with the Ewoks. And I would digress, because they do look like plushies, you know, like teddy bears. And I would have expected that many little kids would want a plushie to sleep with in the shape of an Ewok. I would have loved one if I would have known that the Ewoks were a big thing, you know? Or they were trying to make it a big thing, better said. I digress that some people say, oh, no, blah, 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 it's not the same feeling as watching Grogu be all cutesy and whatnot. Come on. It's more or less the same deal, man. People make fun of those Ewok films, and I'm gonna just lay it on there. I'm just gonna lay it on there. They are pretty good. They are really fun. This is something I could watch fairly often, you know? The Ewok films are really good. But I'm not gonna get into details with the films just yet, because that's for the next segment. So Ewoks live high among the closely spaced trees. The canopies of the great trees were filled with watchers who could alert the tribes of approaching Goroks, or condor dragons, and could use gliders to patrol the lands beyond their local village. Bachelors, on the other hand, often lived on the ground and kept watch for even the greatest dangers, such as Duloks, who often emerge from the swamps to prey on Ewoks and lantern birds. And just to keep it as a side note, and something you gotta know, Ewoks are highly spiritual. As much as they are warriors, they are spiritual beings. They believe a lot in spirits, in the nature, in all the things that are around them. They have shamans within their tribes, so that's how spiritual they are. So before we continue here on the Ender Manzar podcast on the Planet X radio station, where we are discussing who are the Ewoks, and I'll give my opinions here and there on what I think about the two films that feature the Ewoks. And then later on, I'll do a review of the cartoon, because I need to watch those 2 seasons of the cartoon, and that way I can give a better clear-cut idea, because I never saw anything related to the Ewoks other than Return of the Jedi back in the day.
Andrew Van Zark, Andrew Van Zark, Andrew Van Zark, Andrew Van Zark, Andrew Van Zark.
The sponsor of my stream and podcast is DistroKid. If you want 7% off on your first subscription with DistroKid, release your music to the world on every major music platform. Make sure to go to my website, andrewvanzark.com, and click on the discount link under the tab of DistroKid.
Alright, so we're back now, and we're gonna talk about the actual films that I've been building up to this point, you know? We're gonna talk about Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. That's the first one we're gonna talk about. Before we start talking, I want to let you know what people rated it. This is a mixture of actual critics and just random people. So, random people gave it a 69 out of 100. So, fairly bad. And then, on IMDb, they gave it 5.3 out of 10. And then Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 21%. It's not a great score, if you ask me. Even if we tallied it up and we added or do a average out of it, it's still not a good percentage, you know? So, Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, it's when a family's spacecraft crashes on the forest moon of planet Endor. Teenage son Mace, the actor Eric Walker, and his little sister Cindo, actress Aubrey Miller, find themselves separated from their parents. Soon these lost children encounter the Ewoks, the small and furry warriors who call them Moon Home. With the help of these adorable yet fearless natives, brothers and sisters set out on a quest to rescue their parents from the grip of a vicious monster known as Goroks. Initially released in November 25 of 1984. This was directed by John Cordy, starring Eric Walker, Warwick Davis, Fionnuala Flanagan, Guy Boyd, and last but not least, Aubrey Miller. The story was written by George Lucas. This was originally distributed by 20th Television, and then it got distributed by Netflix, and now it's in Disney Plus, and all those other places. Almost all the film is just this build-up, so you can get to know Mace and Cindo. Because on the next film, Battle of Endor, we get to see a more fleshed out characters. And it's sad how they build us up who Mace is, who their parents are, and then on the next one, Shaploop, dead, you know? Dead like they don't even exist since the beginning. I don't like it when a film or a TV series or a audio book or something builds us up a character to then snap it out of reality, you know? Even with the comics and whatnot. It's a thing that I just do not like. I'd rather, if you're going to kill the character fairly quick, do not build me the character. Just let me know that character exists and then dead. But don't build me up such enough information of the character to then have the character killed. You know, maybe there's a thing that in shows or something they want to just change up the story a bit, or maybe they don't have the enough budget to continue some characters on the series or TV or film or something, and they have to cut them off, because I've heard that being a thing. But still, I don't think it's fair for you to build up a character so much for them to kill it forever, because we don't get to see Mace at all, because he literally got killed on Battle of Endor, right in the first few minutes. After that raid of the bad guys and the witch and whatnot, you're trying to find the ultimate power. Just a little piece of the spacecraft, or star cruiser as they call it, where they just snap it in there and it gives it power. But it's not really something you can use on your own. You need the star cruiser to make it work, you know? You gotta get it. So on the first one, what my experience watching the first one was that it's really slow. It's really slow. At the beginning it feels like an E.T. kind of thing, but the other way around, instead of boy meets alien, it's aliens meet boy and girl. When the Caravan of Courage starts, an Ewok adventure, all you see is the parents with lanterns and whatnot trying to find where is Mace and Sindel, and they're yelling their names. And you see on the background the Star Cruiser crashed and all destroyed. And after that, the parents get chased by Gorax, and then Gorax just takes them to the cave. But you don't see that and know that until you find out further into the film, when you get to meet the Ewok shaman, and they use the spinny thing on the table, and you see where they are. And then you finally get to see Gorax in a more clear-cut feel. So Gorax for me felt like the Jedi monster from Empire Strikes Back, or when you get to see a Rancor. That's what I felt watching a Gorax in action. I do like when Star Wars have like big monsters and whatnot. It's really fun though. I still find it interesting how George Lucas tries to make this a galaxy far, far away, and it's really high tech and whatnot. But in reality, most of the Star Wars stuff are really primitive. When you go to Endor, for example, which is the place we're talking about a lot, it's really primitive. It feels like you're just looking at cavemen. Literally, cavemen. It's what I feel when I go to Endor. So it's a really big contradiction how Star Wars is a high-tech thing, and you see the Empire with all this technology, the DS2 Death Star and whatnot. You see the Star Cruisers, the spacecraft, the TIE Fighters, the X-Wings, and all that shit, you know? And then you go to Endor, and it's like this swampy place that it's just so primitive and so cave-looking, and like, if you're like back in the era of rocks, as I call it, you know, the Paleontolic era, where dinosaurs were a thing, rah! I feel that that's like that era of time. When you go to the different planets of Star Wars, you do feel you're transported to a different place. Literally a different place. It's not like when you're here in the real world and on Earth, even if you move to different places, you still feel on Earth. Unlike on Star Wars, when you move to a different moon or planet, it literally feels completely different. The atmosphere, the aesthetics, the civilization. My favorite place is, number one, being Hoth. I like cold places. The second place I like a lot is Coruscant. Coruscant is a really high-tech place, and I like it. I could probably live there. And so I do like Dathomir. Dathomir is one of another place that I do like a lot. It's like really desolated and whatnot. On the most modern things of Star Wars, it's where the Night Sister resides and where she's found. Especially when you play Jedi Fallen Order, you get to see one of the Night Sisters in action, and you do get to partner with her. So yeah, like I was saying, every moon or planet of Star Wars is a place completely different. Unlike Earth, every place, even though you're in a different country or state, it still feels like you're in planet Earth. There's no big difference. So the Ewok adventure films, talking here about the Caravan of Courage, like I said, it's a slow film. It's building you the characters, and you get to understand who the Ewoks are, how they do their things, what do they believe in, and they are spiritual yet warrior furry aliens from the moon of Endor. And then these two humans, Mace and Sindel, befriend an Ewok called Wicket. Wicket is one of the most shown Ewok on the whole film. And when we move to Battle of Endor, after the Ewoks are captured by the bad guys and they are sent to prison, and then the family of Sindel is killed, we get to see Wicket go through a whole journey and a whole adventure with Sindel. So that's one of the Ewoks we get to understand and know the most. We do get to see some Ewoks die. Like, for example, on the previous one, on Caravan of Courage, we do get to see that the most fearful one, the warrior one, the one with the red hood, he gets killed by a Gorax. When the Gorax hits the cave and the rocks fall, and he gets completely concussioned to a point that he can't even go into reality, and then they kill the warrior Ewok. I do recommend you to go watch Caravan of Courage and then Battle of Endor, but I gotta warn you, Caravan of Courage, it's a little bit tedious to watch at some points, because it's a fairly long film. It's 3 hours and 10 minutes. You gotta grasp that. It took me almost a whole day to watch it. I was watching it with my friend, so we did take a few pauses here and there to talk about some stuff that was happening within the film, because we are that kind of people that like to comment about the scenes and whatnot. So then we move to Battle of Endor. So Battle of Endor is a more action flick, In IMDb, they gave it 5.5 out of 10. So they gave it 0.2 more points than Caravan of Courage, which they're both good. So I wouldn't know why they give it such a low grade. They're more of a 7, in my opinion. This one got worse, because the actual users and random people in the world, they give it a 66%, which the other one was 69. So let's give ourselves a synopsis here. What does the Battle of Endor film encompass? So moderators raid the Ewok village and steal a power supply they believe to be magical. Wicket helps Sindel escape the evil's witch, Charal, and they befriend a hermit who may help them save the village. Initially released in November 24, 1985. Directed by Ken Wheat and Jim Witt. Starring Wilford Brimley, Warwick Davis, Aubrey Miller, Paul Gleason, Carl Stryken, Nikki Botello, Eric Walker, Cyan Phillips, and the story was by George Lucas. The theme music composer Peter Bernstein, and the distributors were American Broadcasting Company and the 20th Television. Some people might be wondering, are these Ewok films canon? So the Battle of Endor, it's a C canon. What does it mean when it's C canon? So it's a C canon in the Holocron Continuity Database. The C canon means that it's loosely based. It's loosely canon. It's not 100% canon. It means that it has just details that actually correlate with the main storyline, but it doesn't mean that it is 100% canon. What happens on both films, it stays on those both films. It's not something that we're gonna continuously indulge into within the main story. So now that we're talking about if it's canon or not, does it connect to Return of the Jedi in some shape or form? Because in Return of the Jedi is when we meet the Ewoks. So a timeline published by Star Wars Insider shows the Ewok films occurring a short time before Return of the Jedi. The films takes place between the events of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back of 1980, and Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, 1983. So they do connect in some shape or form with Return of the Jedi. That is why I say that the Ewok films are C-canon, because they do have a connection to Return of the Jedi, and a little bit before with Empire Strikes Back, it's in between there. So yeah, they do loosely connect to the main storyline. And it's interesting how we always thought that Star Wars was being stretched a lot after Disney acquired Star Wars. But before Disney acquired Star Wars, and it was merely a Lucasfilm franchise, we noticed that they were still stretching out the juice out of the fucking franchise with the Ewok films. Because this happens right after Empire Strikes Back and a little bit before Return of the Jedi. Even though they did show these films later on, because Return of the Jedi was in 1983, and then the Ewok films are 1984 and 85. So they did happen before, like Return of the Jedi happened before, and these films happened after, even though the story is before the Return of the Jedi. So people might be saying, Disney is stretching out the story of Star Wars to a degree that it's unbearable. That was happening on the 80s at the same time with the original trilogy. So what are you guys talking about? What are you all saying? Come on, think fucking straight, you motherfuckers. Because I don't understand the fan mentality. I just don't at all. Because the fan mentality is just something that I am never gonna be part of. Because most fans hate almost everything Star Wars, but they still indulge into Star Wars stuff. Like, they complain so much to a degree that is stupid. They were complaining about fucking Cad Bane having the mouth a bit too up when it should have been more lower and skewed. Who cares? Who the fuck cares? Does it change the story? No. No. Not at all. And second, it's two different interpretations. One's a 3D cartoon and the other one's a fucking realistic thing. There are some things you cannot correlate. It's like when you see an anime adaptation. The only thing I complain about anime adaptations, it's when they adapt the story fairly bad. But the characters themselves, I can't complain much about it, because you can't compare a cartoon or an animated character with the reality. On the cartoon, it's exaggerated. On the reality, it's more realistic, because it's the reality, you know? So in that case, I can't complain when it's two different interpretations. It's like when I make music. I make cheap tunes, and sometimes I mix those chip tunes with a little bit of house, a little bit of techno, a little bit of acid, or a little bit of world music. So that being said, even though I do those things constantly, I have different interpretations every time I tackle them. It's a thing. Fucking creators have the ability and the will and the acceptance of fucking having their creation be altered a little bit every now and then if they themselves accept it. If they don't accept the alteration, then by all means do not do it. But if you do accept the alterations, then go ahead and do it. You know? But anyways, now you know who the Ewoks are and where they come from. From the moon of Endor. The fairy little tiny creatures that are 1 meter tall. And they have a lot of primitive technology that are pretty advanced for the moon of Endor. So now, you can indulge in some more information of the Ewoks. And if you have anything to say, You can come to my Twitch. You can listen to me on Apple Podcast and Spotify Podcast. And leave me a comment there, either in the questions down below, rate the stuff, and you'll get yourself running with some more And Evans Art podcast here in the Planet X radio station. So let's get it.
This was the Ander Van Zart podcast. If you have any thoughts or any messages that you want to leave me, go check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or my website, www.andervanzart.com. And I'll catch you on the flip side. When you listen to Ander Van Zart, you listen with power. Now you're listening with power. Ander Van Zart. Stream on every major music platform. Power to the music.